But let's also hear from the Attorney General at the latest Ghana Bar Association conference. He was talking about the Electoral Commission and the fact that as far as he's concerned, they've done fantastically well. We'll get into that and find out on the back of calls as well for a sanitization of the electoral register. But let's hear from the Attorney General.
We must steadfastly resist the dishonorable deeds of those who, without cause, sow seeds of doubt in the ability of the Electoral Commission to organize a credible election. We must deplore, jettison, and without any reservation, reject rhetoric which fans the flames of conflict. The credibility of Ghanaian democracy and the conduct of elections in this country can clearly not be denied by any objective onlooker. We must resist the vain efforts of naysayers who constantly sow seeds of doubt about the credibility of Ghanaian elections. The Electoral Commission has had a sound appreciation of the sacred constitutional responsibility it bears to the people since 1992. Remarkably, it remained unshaken in its quest even in the teeth of COVID-19 and rose to the occasion in 2020 in delivering an internationally affirmed, free, fair, and perhaps the most transparent elections since the inception of the Constitution in 1992. It bears emphasizing, I'll say the inception of the Constitution in 1983, because legally it started on 7 January 1993. It bears emphasizing that an election is a process, among other things. It includes the demarcation of boundaries, registration of eligible voters, the creation of voters register, printing of ballot papers, distribution of ballot papers to voting centers, supervision of voting, the casting of votes, counting and progress, processing of the votes, the declaration of the winner or winners. So far, I have not noticed anything untoward about the Electoral Commission's handling of the process. Even though Ghana has come far in consolidating democracy as a way of life, we can consider free and fair elections in this country as a matter of course. We cannot take that progress for granted. For this reason, we continue to talk about these things as a way of entrenching those undoubted values we hold dear and warding off potential wreckers of the peace of the nation. We must steadfastly resist the dishonorable deeds of those who, without cause, sow seeds of doubt in the ability of the Electoral Commission to organize a credible election. We must deplore, jettison, and without any reservation, reject rhetoric which fans the flames of conflict.
Well, those were the comments of the Attorney General. Let me bring in Dr. John Osae-Kwapong, and then I'll come to Professor Kobi-Mensah on that point as well. The AG patting the EC on the back, but it appears most other political parties are not feeling that way. Prominent in this discussion is the fact that the NDC, for example, wants an external forensic audit of the voters' register. And mind you, in 2012, thereabouts, there was a similar call, that time by the NPP, and it was done. I believe it was the UNDP that actually got involved and conducted this. Why not now? Your take. Let me start with Dr. Osae-Kwapong.
You know, I've been saying regularly that I don't know how this started, but some way, somehow, our two main political parties have gotten to a point where they really believe that their success or otherwise at the polls is also a reflection of what the Electoral Commission does or does not do. So every election cycle, you get some of these issues coming up. It really, for me, in my opinion, it really intensified in 2016. If you look at in the lead up to 2016, then some of the things that Madam Charlotte Osei was taking through and had to deal with because of all of these suspicions about her motives, etc., etc. Now you see that again repeating itself, this time on the flip side, with the ruling party being more sympathetic to the EC, the opposition up in arms. The reverse was true in 2016. So I'm not sure, though, that we've gotten to the point where, I mean, I understand some of NDC's concerns about the provisional register. The EC has said, look, that's why
they've spoken about bloating in many parts, over 200,000 votes. and they've mentioned that in some places you're seeing add-ons of 3,000, 5,000. You put that together, that could sway, that could turn the tide of an election.
Precisely.
And they are saying they are not going to sit down and let that happen. But my question is, why is the EC not opening up its books? If there's nothing to hide, and I'm not suggesting they have something to hide, but if in the past we could open up our books for external forensic audit, why can't we do so now? Not necessarily because you feel like doing it, but because it would get minds at ease to salt away, wash away any thinking if something happens that the election has been stolen. Why not?
Right. I mean, in principle, I agree. Anything that the EC can do, especially at this time, that builds up voters' trust and confidence in the institution and the processes that they are putting in place, will be very helpful. But on the other hand, maybe in the mind, in the minds of the EC and in their thinking, they don't believe that these issues are widespread enough to merit that external forensic audit. And for that, I leave it up to the judgment of the EC. But one of the things that I've been saying this, and I'll keep saying it, is that the EC is going into this election having one of the lowest trust ratings they've ever seen in the Afrobarometer survey, which is why, for me, I'm always encouraging the EC that they have to keep that in mind, that anything they do as part of preparing us for the December election should also be driven by the fact that they want to restore some of that lost trust in the institution. Yes, it doesn't mean that they will have to accede to every demand from the political parties, especially the main opposition party. No, it doesn't mean that. But it also means that how you handle these issues that are emerging would go a long way to either worsen the trust or rebuild that trust. And for me, I just hope that the EC would continue to be guided by the fact that all they want to do is to assure us that we can have trust and confidence in their processes leading up to the December 7th election.
Prof. Mensah, just a quick one. It's like a scale. On one end, the AG says, EC, picture perfect. On the other hand, others say, EC, not really cutting it. And John Osae-Kwapong just mentioned the Afrobarometer report. What is your assessment? Do we have Professor Kwame Mensah on
Yeah,
the
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Excellent. You see, this administration, including its key ministers, sometimes think that they can actually cure bad public perception with speeches. And so when their conduct goes south, then they mount the platforms to give flowery speeches, hoping that they can solve the public perception. I mean, the beauty of democracy is the pluralistic society that is breathed. And so the measurement of a government performance is not through a one-dimensional perspective of a government and its ministers, but through the perspective of the pluralistic society, just as you pointed out. I mean, if your government is praising itself, what are the other sections of society saying? And that's what John is talking about, the Afrobarometer. Is the Afrobarometer, which is conducted from multiple sources of the society, is actually saying that the EC's image is the lowest, but you have government officials saying that thumbs up, 100% good job. How does that cure the public image, very bad public image of the administration? So sometimes when I listen to them, it sounds as if they live in a completely different planet, that they are very much oblivious of what the people are feeling. And that is the insensitivity that people talk about. You have 8 people dead in an election, and you said that election was free and fair. You have a lot of chaos that happened, Ayawaso, for example, and you said that that process was free and fair. You had so many concerns that people raised about the election, and you are just praising yourself that you've conducted the best election ever. Sometimes I wonder how they actually think, their thinking processes. And you see, that is why it makes people become so disappointed and disillusioned in Akufo-Addo, because this is someone who said that somebody took the Ghana or took a kinke from one price to another, and therefore, if he was them, or he were them, he would actually consider leaving office. But look at the kind of things they did, and they have no clue how bad people feel about this, and they praise themselves every day. That's the sorry state of this government.
Well, it will be interesting to find out what the NDC thinks about some of these matters, including their planned demonstration if they don't have their way on some things with the EC.
Yeah, but even before we go there, I mean, this is like the third time I'm listening to that bit from the AG's speech. And in terms of democracy and governance, right, and the general principle of independence of these institutions, the question of whether the Attorney General should be defending the Electoral Commission.
You're asking about his locus in all of this.
Because the EC is supposed to be an independent body, free of influence, and when the AG jumps to the defense of the EC, it may create a perception of bias.
Maybe it's also because of the theme they were discussing.
Well, but I'm just saying
his
that
locus,
should
I don't know.
the AG be defending the EC?
Right.
It's just a question on my mind. But let me ask Mustafa Gbande, how does it sit with you? I mean, the AG is saying that the EC is doing well and nation records should not interfere with their processes. And you are saying that on the 17th of September, you are going on a nationwide demonstration against the EC. What are your thoughts? Mustafa Gbande, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
It's interesting that Godfred Dame will make such a statement. We are not surprised about it because his president have supervised the highest subversion of our rule of law, the highest level of abuse of human rights, the highest weaponization of state institutions, dilution of same against human beings in Ghana. Now, let me be quick to say that it's also clear that government have closed windows to a democratic engagement, taking into account opposition. But we give government the highest of assurance that insofar as our demands of the Electoral Commission is in the interest of the nation, our contribution and commitment to stay to the peace of this country, to commit to a peaceful electioneering process, and by just calling for enforcement of transparent processes. If this makes us nation records, let them allow us to go to 17. We will shake the foundation of this country. It will not be a demonstration as usual. People will sleep on the street until the Electoral Commission does the right thing. And if Godfred Dame thinks that we are nation records and we don't fit to demand the right thing to be done, let him come to the street and meet us there. You see, it points to everything that President Akufo-Addo and his regime want to destabilize this country before they leave. But you see, we are ready as a political party to safeguard the democracy of this country, to safeguard the peace of this country, to defend the democracy of this country against such character of people. I mean, it's baffling, beyond imagination. So in the space of 2 days, you have a very sickening comment from a majority leader that insecurity is condemnable. You have another reckless comment from the legal advisor to the president, who is supposed to be wise, who is supposed to be educated, who is supposed to operate with care.
Mustafa Gbande, you are making your points, but this bit about who is supposed to be wise, who is supposed to be educated, I think is below the belt. Please withdraw.
I'm sorry, but let me also make a point to say that his comment again just tells you what the government is thinking about. I mean, we are going into an election. Electoral Commission admits that the register we have now is flawed with errors. Promises to, restore or correct things. Because the Electoral Commission's own action have not led to trust and public confidence, we demand that let's use state institutions to make the process more transparent through a forensic audit.
And so, Mustafa, you think that this demonstration, Mustafa, hold for me, and we need to make it brief. Do you think that this demonstration is the ultimate way to force the hands of the EC to conduct this forensic audit into the provisional voters register?
It is not intended to force the hand of the EC. It's intended to manifest our rights available to us legally. It's intended to communicate to the people of Ghana and join forces with the people of Ghana to ensure that the right thing is done. You just condemned what the Attorney General did. You just condemned what he said.
I didn't condemn. I asked questions of whether or not that's an argument we should make. I didn't outrightly condemn. It's a question I asked. If he should.
So I'm just saying that because of the weight the Attorney General carries and the role he plays in all of these matters, trying to defend a commission when we are just asking for transparency, only demonstrates to the fact that this commission will not do anything until a public manifestation of a protest is done.
Right. So now
and I dare say that we will do it and do it well.
Right. You've had a series of meetings and it didn't produce the results you want. I'm tempted to ask you, what if this demonstration doesn't also produce the results that you're looking for? What next?
When we get to that bridge where Ghanaians who are desirous of voting, whose names in the register are being threatened, who do not trust the Electoral Commission, join forces with the NDC to go to the street. When we are out of the street, I'm sure the answers will come from there.
Thank you, Mustafa. Ben.
Well, so here we are. They are planning this demonstration and they say if the right things are not done, then they'll be hitting the streets in just a matter of days. We'll take the concluding comments from our guests as well, and we'll bring in the issue of Wale. Of course, we also saw in recent days the interactions there, then the vote, and what happened subsequently with 3 people finding themselves complicit in a few things. But let's listen to these sounds. Let's watch this, and then we'll be back on that discussion. Okay, so before we get there, let me bring in Dr. John Osae-Kwapong on the Attorney General's comments and then matters arising. Dr. Osae-Kwapong, any thoughts on these? Any reflections?
I can understand the call to not denigrate the institution or create narratives that sort of cast doubts on the integrity of the EC. I understand that call and why we should sort of have certain kinds of dispositions towards our institutions like the EC. But as I've also said, the EC does face some major challenges in terms of public perception on the question of trust, and so the burden is not just on citizens to sanitize their perceptions about the EC. The burden is also on the EC to ensure that all their actions or inactions goes a long way to assure citizens that it is an institution that can be trusted.
Okay, Professor Kobi-Mensah on the same point. So the demonstrations. I don't know whether you've addressed the bit about the demonstrations, Dr. Osae-Kwapong. What do you make of this?
It's their constitutional right. For me, as I keep saying, I leave it up to the judgment of the EC to figure out what they want to do in response to some of these concerns that the NDC is raising.
All right. Professor Kobi-Mensah, so on that point, and then the demonstration as well, the right way to go to get our electoral register sanitized?
Well, of course, as a political communication, lecturer. I see that demonstrations are one of the potent weapons of political participation. If you look at the big decisions globally, from the political front and even from the economic front, what has yielded results, especially amongst political leaders who do not want to take action or institutions that do not want to take action, is demonstration. And so if the NDC feels that that's the only language that the leaders will hear, why not? It's their right to actually do that. But with regards to the public image of the EC, I don't think that the citizens have actually any responsibility of sanitizing. It's the EC that has responsibility of sanitizing its behavior, because I'm not sure that if the behavior of the EC is in accordance with the expectations of the people, a certain institution, just like the NDC alone, for example, could paint a negative picture for the public to actually consume. It doesn't happen. And when you look at the interaction between voters, media, and the political class, that interaction is actually mediated, of course, the voters and the political class is mediated by the media, of course. And so if the EC was doing something better, I am sure that it will be in the public where people will be able to appreciate. And of course, they will counter the position of the NDC, for example, if they thought that it is not the right thing that they are talking about. But you have completely different, situation. A lot more people think that the EC is not doing what is right. You claim that there is nothing untoward, but we have seen photos or footages of people holding their biometric devices that are not supposed to have. People have come out to actually talk about they being transferred without their knowledge. All these things are things that are playing out in the media. Would the media concoct these stories? No. But even if the traditional media, let's say, for example, had been, hijacked by a certain political party, what about the social media footages that we're seeing? What about people's own personal accounts that we're hearing? These are not made-up stories. These are facts. And so the EC has responsibility to sanitize itself so that people will change their perception towards them. And so for me, they need to put their house in order.
Right. Thank you so much.